Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our July meeting, being the 1st of July today. Firstly, I've got apologies from Councillor Al Blakey. Are there any other apologies for today? Some are prepared to move to Councillor King, second to Councillor Ward. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Are there any conflicts of interest for reporting in today's minutes? Firstly, just under acknowledgements, it's missing in the. I just want to acknowledge at last night's Rotary changeover, Russell Stalker was acknowledged for his 70 years of membership of the Rotary Club of Rangiora. A remarkable individual who joined when he was 24, so do the math. But he's he was classified as dairy farmer. He and Isla lived just on the outskirts of Rangiora. They were three sons, and they were there representing both of them last night because with their age they're not terribly well at the moment. We weren't able to make last night's meeting, but 70 years of service, voluntary service, is huge, and I just thought it appropriate to mention here. I've got to know Russell through not only the Rotary Club but other involvements, but he credits the fact of joining Rotary or service clubs with, he said in his day was being a dairy farmer, it was quite lonely by himself working, didn't have a lot of social interaction, so going to Rotary opened up his world and meant that he was able to give back to his community. And I think of all the projects that he's been involved with over those years, which have been for the betterment of our community. So I just thought it appropriate to mention his service today. All right. Is there any other acknowledgements? Come to confirmation of minutes, item 3.1. So we've got the minutes of the council meeting on the 3rd of June. Some are prepared to, they've been circulated. They have. It says on here circulated separately. Yeah, there they are. 3rd and 17th. Some are prepared to move. Moved Councillor Bryan, seconded Councillor Fulton. Any discussion? Put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Item 3.2, which is the minutes of our meeting, the council meeting on Tuesday, the 17th of June. Pages 13 to 23, both listed as 13 to 23, so that they can't be both matched. So I'm sure that it'll be updated. Some are prepared to move. Moved Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Cairns. I'll put that. Sorry, any discussion? Put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? No. I have no deputations and presentations. There's no adjourned business. So the first report is at item 6.1, the May 25 flood event response and recovery. So is Kelly and Jared doing that, and Joanne? Please come forward. Colleagues, I was listening to the audio just out of interest the other day, and I've noticed that with the recordings, it's unless you've got, from what I understand, unless you've got your microphone very close to you, it's very hard to hear. So it's quite faint. So when you are speaking, if you could have your microphones nearby, it'll just make those who are on live stream and want to listen later. Or later on, a little easier for them to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is an update on the report that you received on the 3rd of June, which set out the indicative expenditure following the May 2025 report. So this report updates the expenditure and also sets out how we will be funding that expenditure. So the total revised cost is now just under $1 million at $972,953. So that is a slight increase on what was presented at the June report. So if you look at table 1 on page 10 of the agenda, there has been a decrease in the roading expenditure. The stormwater and wastewater costs have increased slightly, and that is effectively the final cost for the temporary pumps that were deployed, and sucker trucks came in slightly higher than what we were estimating. The land drainage and river estimate is unchanged, but we've actually added in the $100,000, which wasn't in the June report, for the investigation work being undertaken by the infrastructure resilience team. So that is, while we're putting it in there as an expense to show that it's costs associated with this work, it is already covered in the budgets. So it's not additional budgets that we're seeking. There is a total of $498,000 that we are seeking for budgets. That's the majority of that is for roading, $434,000, and Joanne has put in the application with NZTA for emergency funding, and we're expecting to get 51% of that, so that is $221,000 of funding from NZTA. So that is not yet approved, but it is in the process. I don't know if Joanne's got any comments or indication of whether it's likely to go through or not. But under 1.3 on page 6, you can see the rating implications there. From a rating perspective, it's having a 0.1% impact on rates, or 54 cents across the districts. And for coastal urban, so there has been expenditure against the Oxford Urban account that we didn't have budgets for. So a lot of the pumps that we, from a stormwater perspective, were in the Waikuku Beach area, which is part of the coastal urban scheme. So that has a rating impact of $2.57 on average per property there. As part of the budget round for the 25-26 year, there was actually a budget request for temporary pump deployment. So we've actually got an allowance in future from 25-26 onwards to cover some of those additional costs. All of the other work, the work we did in Kaiapoi and the wastewater work, has effectively been covered with an existing budget, so we're not seeking additional budgets there. The only other point to note, under 1.6, is a little bit of an update on where we're at with responding to all of the service requests. So there's 49 investigations and 80 maintenance tasks that Melanie's infrastructure resilience team is working on at the moment. That is going to take 3 to 4 months to work through, and we'll be providing regular update reports to the UNR committee as we progress through that. So, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Joanne or any of the other team, have you got anything you wish to add?
No, I think Kelly's covered that off very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of colleagues, councillor Meetings?
Thank you, and thank you for the report, guys. There's obviously a lot of work underway there. Just on page 10, where we've got the tables and that, sorry, that's actually the recommendation page, but what aspects of these costs are we able to seek insurance payments for?
So roading assets are not insured, but we obviously do get the NZTA subsidy, so nothing from a roading perspective.
And from a drainage perspective, because effectively a lot of this is to do with maintenance, so it hasn't been specifically damaged to infrastructure per se. So effectively it's just additional maintenance and then investigation assessment work that we need to undertake. So we haven't submitted an insurance claim for any of the work that's in this report.
Okay, thanks. That leads me into my next question very nicely then.
Do you want to just...
Yeah, it probably doesn't meet the threshold anyway with
Sorry.
the infrastructure and insurance when we normally have a large event, so it wouldn't meet that threshold.
LEP is which is the scheme that we're involved with, has a very high deductible. There's a self-insured component of that.
Yeah, ouch.
Well, we're one of the few councils that does. There's only a small number that actually do cover their infrastructural costs like we do through that scheme. So we are covered, but it's to get full insurance would be very prohibitive.
I know we've done very well with the insurance that we did get, but I was just curious what it actually covered. So out of the, actually that's roading, but out of the 168K spent coming from the existing roading budgets, so what budgets was that money coming from? And was that already planned? Like, was it already planned for renewals and maintenance, or did it just happen to luckily coincide with the storm aftermath and not having just been finished and then, yeah?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we have to do and make sure we do in terms of requesting funding from NZTA for an emergency event is make sure that it relates purely to the emergency. So if there are items that needed maintenance, and a really good example is our bridge maintenance, if we know there are pre-existing issues, then we need to manage that through our existing maintenance budgets anyway, which is what we're doing. The other example I would have is remettling. So where we have a road that is about due for metal in the next year or two anyway, we would normally expect for the cost of that to come out of our normal remettling budget, as opposed to responding to a road which has very recently been remetalled and had a whole lot of metal washed off it due to the flooding. So we always have to do that sensibility check and make sure we are kind of claiming from the right place, if you like.
That's good that there are things that hadn't happened before that. And one last question. On page 13, we're just talking about the wastewater treatment plants. That was a 2.7-year event for Oxford, but the sewage pond reached capacity. Do we know why?
So for each of our wastewater treatment plants in Rangiora, Oxford and Woodend, we're going to do a detailed analysis of what actually happened there. At Rangiora and Kaiapoi and Woodend, pre-event we actually drain the holding pond. They've got a static surface water level that we drain down in anticipation of the wet weather event. At Oxford we don't. The holding pond there is actually mostly dry, so we only pump into it during storm events. So we're yet to do that analysis to look at, given the return event of that storm, how do we operate the plant during the event, and also with the loading coming in from the reticulation, the inflow and infiltration, was that greater than we actually expected? But effectively for a storm event in the order of 2 to 3 years, even though it was longer duration, we would have expected that the infrastructure there would have handled that event. But it's something we need to have a closer look at to see what improvements we can make.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking, was it really a 2.7? Yeah. Hey, thank you for your answers and your work on this.
Thanks, Nikki. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for this report. I noticed in the rivers notes there, the Koku River talks about the stop bank being tested. So what does actually tested sort of mean? Does it mean overtopping? Was there subsidence, and how close? So that's the first part of that question. Then secondly, just the co-funding. Mentions a co-funding from council of 7,500, if I read it correctly. That doesn't seem like a lot. Is that a misprint or something? Or are we only putting 7,500 in ourselves?
Yeah, so the Okuku River currently falls outside of the Environment Canterbury River rating area, but they are the best authority in terms of managing rivers within our district. So following the May 21 event, we worked with Environment Canterbury to do some works on the Okuku River. So you'll recall there were some properties at risk of flooding, and also the river broke out and came over Inglis Road and Riverside Road, which damaged some of council's infrastructure. So at the time we worked with the regional council, they did some river training works and bank protection works, and that was to prevent or to reduce the likelihood of the river breaking out at that location. The reason we co-funded it was because of the benefit of it effectively avoided us having to go in and do remedial works on the road in that area. So that we met with ECAN after the May event, and they have indicated that it's in the order of about $15,000 worth of work that's required to effectively post-flood. The river's changed its course slightly. They want to do some more works to train the river back to the true left bank, away from the road and the properties, and we've agreed to co-fund that 50%.
But the testing of the river, I don't want to alarm people, but how close is close? Did it come right to the top, or was it actually as undermining or subsidence? What is the issue there?
Effectively, and probably the best thing we could actually do is cover this in the report to UNR. Environment Canterbury have provided us some photographs of the river training works, as well as the bank works that they've done. The best way to describe it is the bank works are almost like reinforcement rather than a stop bank. It's stopping the river from going towards the road and the properties. And so the river was actually eroding the works that they'd put in place, and they're basically reinstating it. So it's a sacrificial layer to actually to deflect the river back away. But we can provide some more information in the UNR report on that.
And I take it based on the recommendations here. Are you satisfied that $15,000 is sufficient for this works? Do we have any advice on that? Doesn't seem like a lot for dirt and expertise.
I think probably the bigger picture here is this is something we actively need to work with the regional council on, in terms of the Okuku River coming into a river rating area. And you'll recall from a meeting with the regional council that it's something they're looking at in terms of their next long-term plan, and reviewing all of the rates in our district and what the best approach is. So that's something we're actively working with the regional council.
Thank you. Councillor Cairns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team, for the report. We're part way through winter, and effectively you're requesting additional funding. Are we not budgeting enough for these weather events? Do we need to put more money aside for it in our budgets?
So we're on day one of the new financial year. So this cost is associated with that event that happened in the last financial year. So we managed to fund about 50% of it from existing budgets. In your annual plan, you have made a number of additional budget allocations in the drainage rating areas, and that's been in response to the advice we've had from the drainage advisory groups, and also to our expenditure over the last years to try and bring those up to the costs that we're starting to incur these days. The other thing is the infrastructure resilience team. So again, you've made allocation in your annual plan budget for the operation of Melanie and her team, as well as some capital budget for additional works that they will undertake. You will notice that there was, in the table, Kelly did talk to this, there was $100,000 of the infrastructure resilience team has been allocated to this event. So that that will mean we are going to have to manage how we budget throughout the year to try and stay within it. I think on balance, we've got it about right. So we don't want to over budget and then not have, not necessarily need to spend it, so you're rating for that. And the other thing is if we were hit by a very bad event in the year, and it could be an earthquake or it could be a big flood, then the council would have to consider how it funds at that time. Now, in the infrastructure strategy and in our financial strategy, the council has left headroom in its borrowing allowance. So, and that's something that has happened since the earthquake. So there's always been, and there is, a headroom allowance. So if there was a huge event, there's the ability for the council to take on additional debt to fund that and stay within its headroom allowance. And the modelling was actually done on an alpine fault earthquake. So if we were to get another flood event that is of this scale in the coming financial year, we'll do as much as we can to manage it within budgets, but otherwise the council could take on some additional debt, but that would be, if it was this sort of scale event, that is well below the allowance that's made in the headroom. So that's one of the advantages of this, I suppose, this council having managed its debt at the level it is, actually allows that headroom. Hopefully we never need it, but it is there as the insurance policy. And also, one of the questions before was about insurance. So if we do get a very large event, there are formulas that NZTA use to help fund. So that's effectively the way we insure our roads, is the co-funding from NZTA. And if, again, a very large event that did affect our Three Waters infrastructure, we've got insurance on all of our headworks, as well as the LAP insurance on our buried infrastructure. And we called on that, and between us and Christchurch, we cleaned that out in the earthquakes, but since then it's built back up to be a fund that's available. So look, we'll continue to look at how things go, and when we come into the annual plan and the LTP, we'll be giving you advice on how much we've been spending, and advice on whether we think those budgets should be maintained as they are, or whether there would be some benefit in looking at some additional funding in the future.
Thank you for the thorough answer. It was almost like asking you to look into a crystal ball. So thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you. And Jared, just following on from that, in our capital budgets in the future, there is quite substantial money being set aside for drainage projects. Have you got I know that Mandeville's one that certainly Councillor Williams has been pushing for. It's about 20 to 30 million of additional debt that we would take on for that potentially if we chose to do stage 2. Have you got an idea of roughly what we've got sitting in our out-of-year budgets for drainage-related projects?
Yes. So just roughly speaking, there's 2 million per year for the next decade for infrastructure resilience. So largely that will be for drainage improvements. There's also another $20 million tranche over the coming decade for stormwater improvements, urban stormwater. So that will be for us achieving water quality treatment. But that also actually, when we do the water quality treatment improvements, often that actually builds in additional attenuation. So that's 40 million for effectively stormwater, if you call the infrastructure resilience money there. There's also 20 million for the Kaiapoi sewer in the coming decade for the wastewater system, and you'll know we've been using a lot of sucker trucks in these events, and so the intention is to try and carry out improvements. You've got just coming up in the next a couple of financial years, Cridland Street, there's money in the budget for a stormwater and sewer pump station. So this is additional to the figures I've been talking about, I think in the order of 3 million for that, something 4 million for that. And there's also, not necessarily related to purely storm capacity, but Oxford wastewater treatment plant, and that was discussed today in one of the questions about the capacity of Oxford. So we've got budget there for providing an upgrade to the Oxford wastewater scheme, whatever that might be, whether that's, and we're still investigating exactly the option we would have there, whether it's an upgrade to the existing plant or connection to the eastern districts. So there is, and there's ongoing funding for the next 10 years for the infrastructure resilience team. So all of that is already in the long-term plan budget and has been allocated and modelled out.
And stage 2 works are around 20 to 30
In addition
million?
to that, yes, sorry,
Yes.
yeah, I didn't mention that.
Yes.
Yeah, that stage 2 works for Mandeville, that is in the order of 20 million. And again, that's been allowed for in the LTP budget.
In Waikoku, have we got any allowance? Yes,
Yes,
allowance
there's
out.
10, yeah, Taranaki pump station, 10 million.
So
in the
I
LTP.
had a feeling it was around 130 million of that sort of order and for 3 water works. Is that right over the next LTP period?
I
of
have
that
to do
order?
the mental arithmetic,
Yeah.
but there's a decent amount of money there. Yeah, certainly in the order of 100 million, which is just continuing to build on the infrastructure. And look, this event really showed the value of some of the investment that the council's made over the last decade or so. So in Kaiapoi, you'll recall we've spent about 20 million on trunk stormwater upgrades, and that we were very fortunate to get some co-funding from the government for that, and that really showed its benefit. We would have had a lot of surface flooding in the urban areas of Kaiapoi, and you'll remember in events like, I know 2014 was a bigger event, but we had really substantial flooding in there. So that not only helps, that stormwater upgrade hasn't only provided additional capacity in Kaiapoi and flood protection, but it also keeps the stormwater out of the sewer network. So, you know, as far as we know, we actually contained the sewer in our network in Kaiapoi, which we definitely wouldn't have done that a number of years ago. So that's been quite an improvement. We've still got a way to go in that area. So you know, there's actually, it's nice to be able to see some actual tangible results from some of those investments. And I've heard other anecdotes of work in, you know, areas in Ohoka. Interestingly, even the Threckles Road flooding issue, we've got work underway right now at Bradley's Road to put a much bigger outlet into the Custmain drain, and we had photographs during the event from one of our councillors that actually showed water was spilling there, and so we know we're actually going to get some benefits from that as well.
Thank you. You had a further question, Councillor Fulton? Then we'll
Oh,
move.
just picking up, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just picking up on your comments there, Jared, say that 10-year time frame for Kaiapoi, for instance, has the use of sucker trucks reduced over that period? Is there any comparability? Do you think if there's been 10 years ago on the current budget works, would we have had a lot more sucker trucks out there? And will they reduce over time?
I actually, we'd have to check. We used sucker trucks. In one area, we actually had a pump failure in one of the small pump stations, but other than that, it was to help additional capacity. I think the answer would be we're probably using them as much, but they're much more effective. So where we would have used them in the past, we were still getting overflows, and we did have some, not just overflows, we had actually where it was going into people's property, and you'll recall the elderly housing in Kaiapoi. We've resolved that issue there. So we don't get overflows from there anymore. So we probably haven't used them less, but they're much more effective now.
We've got a series of recommendations here. Is someone prepared to move? Councillor Ward, seconded Councillor Williams. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Ward?
Yes, thank you. I just really want to thank the staff for all the efforts that they've made in the last year, and I know that we avoided a lot more property damage and damage for people and stress by being ahead of the game and by setting up a great team to manage and preempt and mitigate against the worst effects of what's happening to us with these rain events now. And we've made so many improvements. I really want to say that what we have in mind, I know there's a huge investment that we have to do in the future, but it is paying off. And it is saving people's stress, it's saving people's insurance, saving people's lives, and that's what we're about. It's about our well-being. So keep up the great work. Thank you very much. I really appreciate what you're doing and what you're offering for us to pass. And I'm supportive of all these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. It was actually quite noted by myself where our neighbour councils had civil emergencies in situation. I think if we hadn't been kept up with their maintenance and the pumping stations in Kaiapoi, we surely too would have had a civil emergency and the cost would have been a lot greater than what it is. So I'm quite happy that we've done some of that extra maintenance and some of the wee jobs and bits and pieces. We've got a long way to go because the rain events seem to be getting more and more and more, but I think we're on the right path to, on the infrastructure side of council, to help these things, and so it's good work.
Thank you. Councillor Mealings, and followed by Councillor Fulton.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to thank you for your work on this. This is really showing the value of having that infrastructure resilience team that we put in place, and the funding that we've also put aside as well. It's showing its value here and now, that was a really good proactive thing to do, because there's not a lot of certainties in life, but one thing we are certain is that we're going to see more of these kind of events happen more often, and to be able to actually head some of these things off of the past by doing works that we've seen kind of ahead of time and working on those problem areas, as well as having a team ready to hit the ground running whenever something does happen, has proven so far to be priceless. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just feel that this is an opportunity also to thank the staff for it sounds like there's some pretty positive relationships with ECAN, particularly on flood control, river maintenance and co-budgeting. And I think that's really been valuable, not just in our major rivers, but our tributaries. And I'm seeing sort of signs that even some of it, so that Mandeville Swannanoa local community consultation, the value of having ECAN there alongside us in some of those meetings, so they can understand some of our drainage networks. I think it's also really valuable to keep in mind, particularly in light of Mandeville Stage 2, and it's another issue, another set of problems, but there is some real value in just maintaining our existing sort of drainage works, whether that's raceways, swales, roadside depressions, all that stuff. It's all that little 1% to add up, and I know you're doing that well at the moment, so just bear that in mind as well. So well done, and I commend this to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, and I also am going to support this here. It's look, I don't think any of us want to see these sort of costs, but it is what it is. When nature comes along, we are bound to respond effectively for our communities. It's what they expect us to do, and it's what the council also expects, to make sure our community is kept safe and protected. We were praised through the time for our response during that period by the Minister, by Civil Defence. I was sitting in the EOC through that time, and there were a range of decisions that were being made, but in the end there was preparedness if we did need to look at an emergency being declared, but at the end, because of the work that had been done, because of the information that we had to hand with the work that was being done with Environment Canterbury, and they're an essential partner in this for us to know the state of the rivers and where they're at. Undertaking that wasn't felt necessary. It was going to be needed. It wasn't going to added, but always prepared. At the end of the day, it's myself that signs the declaration, whomever's in this job. and it's not a responsibility I take lightly. It's something really important, and I felt extremely well advised through that time, not only by our controller, but also the support that comes through from Civil Defence. And it was really, we've just been through some reviews of that, and I actually made it clear that I don't think through that that there needs to be wholesale change in that regard, because actually the system in place is very good if it's used right. And there's some really good tools there that make sure if you're in that position and having to make a decision around whether it's clear or not, that process where Civil Defence, with our police, with fire, and all the emergency services are with you, you're making an informed judgment as to whether or not, declaring an emergency is something you only do if you need to, because it does unsettle people, and you don't want to have to do that unless it's absolutely required. But if it's needed, we will do that, and we've shown our preparedness to do that over the years. These aren't one-off events. Unfortunately, they're occurring a bit more often than we would ideally like. And I think, and I'd like to acknowledge Jared, Jeff, and all the team for their preparedness to bring to us a report around establishment of the infrastructure resilience team. I think that's showing some real value, and we are hearing that around our communities, where known problems that have been there for some time are now being addressed. There's a capital work program. My understanding is that's around 120 million over the LTP period. That's right, and we will continue to address those where we need to, but it's a progressive addressing that. We've got to make sure that the solutions we're putting in place are actually needed. Like stage 2 works in Mandeville, there's a preliminary budget item of around 20 million there, but we've got to do a lot more work before we know that's what's required, but it's sitting in our budget because that's the prudent, responsible thing to do. So I know there's a lot of conversation about debt and where our headroom's sitting at, and there's those points. Well, it's just indicating this is a sort of level of expenditure that may be required in the future to make sure our community is looked after. And around infrastructure, this council has a very proud record in that, and making sure that we're invested well in our Three Waters infrastructure. So to Jeff, the team, and all our team that are here today, thank you for the work that you're doing, but also critically in partnership with our drainage advisory groups right across our district, who are our eyes and ears on the ground, who've got a lot of experience from being landowners in the area and have seen a lot. Fact checking is really essential. And I see Kelly nodding. Before we undertake works, to make sure that they're actually needed. The engineering advice that comes alongside that's really critical, but also local knowledge is really critical. During the last event, I did drive through Ahoka. I lived in that area for 20 odd years. I know how wet it gets through the air, and I could see where a proposed development is being looked at, just how inappropriate it is for that land. It's wet, it was sodden. It doesn't matter how much experts and consultants can argue that these things can be mitigated. Well, the local experts tell you that how inappropriate it would be for that locality to add substantial housing to that area. So last week we made the right decision, which was to adopt the recommendations that came through from the hearings panel, which was to decline that. And I hope that that continues to be the case going forward, and we will, as a council, advocate strongly that well, I certainly, as long as I have influence here, that development does not occur, because it's simply not appropriate for that area. And the evidence shows that. And with the level of money that we're proposing to have to spend to just manage what is there now, let alone adding any extra pressure. So all these weather events do put a lot of pressure on our system, but I want to just acknowledge, as someone that's firsthand sees how our team responds during this time, just how proud I am of all of you. and also the leadership that our CEO's brought in with the team's approach that makes sure that there's a rotation in place to make sure our team doesn't burn out, but critically, that experience is shared across our organisation. So when we do have events like this, that we have people and capabilities right across the council to ensure our community is safe and protected. Any further speakers? Right of reply, Councillor Ward.
I'd just like to add to Councillor Fulton's comments about the support and the partnership with ECAN in these situations. And I'd just like to say that they did listen to us at our request, and they had 2 bulldozers on the Wednesday night of our last event at the mouth of the Ashley, which I'm sure took a lot of pressure off the Waikuku Beach area, and that's something that we really, really appreciate.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I'm going to put the recommendation now. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Declare that carried. Thank you. Excuse me. Now at 6.2. Nadisha, are you leading this report? Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. This report seeks council approval to adopt Alcohol Control Bylaw 2025. Public consultation on the draft bylaw was conducted in May, and none of the submitted suggested any changes to what we propose. So all the changes in this bylaw are minor and administrative. That means the content of the Alcohol Bylaw 2025 is pretty much the same as the expiring bylaw, which is Alcohol Control Bylaw 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from Simon or no?
No, I think that's been through the council a number of times, this one, as it's progressed. Just noting that there were, I think, 6 submitters, seven submitters, none of whom wished to be heard. They all agreed with the proposed bylaw, so we feel very comfortable.
Okay. Questions of colleagues? Councillor Bryan?
Just, I was supposedly on the panel. Could you give an update? Because I was having kittens and I might have missed something. And I didn't know that it had gone through as smoothly as it had. We didn't have to get back together. And I was a bit worried. So, thanks.
Thank you. Actually, we got 7 submissions, 3 from organizations and 4 from individuals. 3 organizations include New Zealand Police, National Public Health Service, and Alcohol Health Watch. Particularly, police is responsible for enforcement of this bylaw, and they mentioned that they are happy with the review results because we had several discussions with police during the review period and received their statistics to find out whether this bylaw is effective and is it practical to continue with this bylaw. And in terms of individual, they were just commented they are happy with the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. I note that Christchurch City, I think they've just done their LAP. Just remind me how the LAP interrelates with, there's a bit of media about that overnight, relates with the bylaw. Just remind me, or remind us all how that interrelates. I think that's what they reviewed, if I read the media correctly over this morning.
So I think Christchurch City Council introduced a local alcohol policy. We already have one in place.
Yes.
And Nadisha, as well as doing the alcohol control bylaw, is also reviewing our local alcohol policy, and we'll come back to the council probably at the end of the year. You're currently working through research similar in the way that she's done with alcohol control bylaw.
I was pretty sure that's how it was. I just wanted, and for everyone's benefit, because there's been little attention in the press certainly today around that and around the hours restrictions and those. So the LAT will come back to council later this year, and will, I assume, go out to consultation. Is that normally how that would be? Did we get any feedback from the community? Remind me, community boards, any feedback on this bylaw from the boards?
Regarding this bylaw?
Yes.
Yes, we had community board workshops, and even we get kind of representative feedback from all the community board at the initial steps of the review, and then we conduct individual workshops with each community board.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Keynes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can you remind me, the bylaw is a reactionary as opposed to a proactive? Because I'm just looking at the amount of reserves in Rangiora that are under the alcohol ban area in comparison to the likes of North Wood End and also Pegasus, where the reserves are not covered by the ban. So can you just remind me as to how that works, please?
Actually, this bylaw is entirely evidence-based. Council should have sufficient evidence to justify an alcohol ban to a particular area. All the alcohol ban areas included in this bylaw based on evidence. That means both community and police supported, and there are some statistics on alcohol-related harm in public places in this area. If we don't have any evidence, we can't proceed with an alcohol ban. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And also, I'm going to turn this into a question. Can you please check page 37 and 60? I don't believe. Can you reassure us that there is no skate park in Corcoran Reserve? Because there isn't a skate park in Corcoran Reserve. Thank you.
So that needs to be edited, is that what you're suggesting, Councillor Keynes?
Might be a suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton?
I just want to raise this issue of our town names and our gazetting of our town names and the bylaw. I'm looking at our CEO at this moment, but we've got references, when we have references to Wood End Town, etc., Kaipoi Town, is this all consistent with the current legal definition of what the town boundaries are, etc., the gazetting of the names? We had a bit of discussion over this, you know. And I think the Wood End example, we now have a North Wood End, we might have an expanded urban area in Wood End. So if we got all this under control, that we're not going to have someone saying that this isn't gazetted legal.
It's a very good question. So I guess two parts to that. The first one is, as you'll recall, we have a program of work which will see us looking at town names and places and the official status of those through some policy work later this year. So we'll actually start working through that process. With regards to the bylaw, I think the place names and localities within the bylaw itself, we feel very comfortable that they have been successful in the past as being enforceable, and we feel comfortable that they relate to areas that are.
So it's captured, for example, if you were having a drink on the edge of town, it's not a gazetted park or something, but yeah, town fringes. I just want to make sure that we're consistent with the urban growth.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a public harm incident relating to alcohol within one of the captured areas in the bylaw, then certainly the bylaw could be used by the police for enforcement. If the incident were occurring outside of those captured areas, then of course the police would have to use another mechanism to enforce or resolve that issue.
Thank you. Just further to Councillor Fulton's point on page 37, then I'd suggest you update the Oxford one, so Oxford, says Oxford means I'd put the word town in there just to be consistent with everywhere else. I think that's the point you were kind of making.
I think that's a good point, because obviously the drinking doesn't necessarily happen in the town square. Often it happens in our semi-rural, more outlying areas, which may well be part of a town, area.
Adding the town, I don't think it makes any, it just will assist with that definition. It is called Oxford Town, so it is township. Councillor Menos?
Thank you. Just in section 7 of the bylaw, under amendment to the bylaw, it says that council can remove, add to, or alter any of the listed restricted public places and can amend the restricted periods outlined, etc., in accordance with the Local Government Act. What would be the process that would have to be undertaken? Would that require a consultation, or would we go, okay, hey, there's a new park in Northwood End that we want to add to this, or we found that, Pegasus actually would benefit from this, from the work that we've looked at? What would we have to do to actually amend any of these?
Actually, the general rule is, if we are making significant changes that impact community freedom or something, we will have to go through the public consultation process. If we are making minor changes to the bylaw, that means spelling mistakes or any other, in enhancing the clarity of the bylaw, we can do it without a public consultation. So if we are going to add a particular park under the existing alcohol ban area, definitely we will have to go through public consultation.
Okay, thank you. And does that also, how does that apply to the Murphy Park section in section 6? So where it says that council can amend, alter, or remove the specified period. So saying that you could change the days or the time to correlate with the rugby or rugby league season. Because it's in there like that, does that mean you can go, oh, the season actually runs from these dates this time of year, so we can just put that in? Or does that mean that you have to then consult with that as well?
Yeah, every time when we review the bylaw, we contact the relevant parties to get it confirmed that the rugby season, it happened this time as well. Yes, actually, yes.
So I think what Nadisha's saying is, as part of this bylaw, we have contacted all of those parties, and we feel pretty comfortable that the times and days that we've captured in there will provide sufficient coverage for the activities that they're undertaking on the park. If they were to significantly change their time or days of playing, we may well need to review the bylaw. The bylaw is enforceable based on what is the current content, so we may need to review that, and depending on the level of change, we may need to consult, because it may have a wider impact on the community than just the club if we change the times and dates and so on and so forth.
So you can't just go, okay, this year your season starts and ends on what date? Great, okay, so that's what the dates and times are for this year. And next year it could change, or, yeah.
I'm pretty certain that the dates of the season stay fairly consistent, and we provide a bit of a buffer, but we can definitely check on that for you.
It just says hours from 1st of April to 1st September. It doesn't, I'm just wondering, because it just seems to kind of...
Maybe the chair of the LAP is actually with us, if he wouldn't mind a comment.
Please, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you've got to, that particular one you'll need to leave open, because if there are finals games or club days that are outside playing times, you will need to make allowance for that, because you've got to remember this is a request from the club to control their own licence within that park.
Okay.
So you do need some flexibility. If you make it rigid, then come the very days you might want to put restrictions there will be the very days that will not be under the bylaw. So you need to be a bit careful with your flexibility around that. And as Simon said, you need the ability to actually change that or extend, or you might even bring it back if you want to. I can't think of a reason why you would bring it back, but to extend that if necessary, I think.
Thank you for that, Neville. My question is really just to make sure that we are maintaining enforceability, because the way it reads in the draft is where it says the hours, it just says hours, comma, from first. It doesn't say what hours or whatever. So I just want to make sure that that's the new draft is enforceable if it's substantially changed. Looks like a good thing. I just want to make sure that it's not going to cause a problem. So.
Yep.
I'm just clarifying the reason for my question.
Yes, but
So.
it's traversing into that, so
Yes, sir.
hold your comments to the end if you, unless there's any other question you've
I'm
got.
happy with it as long as I just need to make sure that it's enforceable.
Do you have a question?
My question was basically the way it's written, is it enforceable, or if we needed to change it, or is it something that has to happen
Are you satisfied that
annually? That's what I'm trying to sort of tease out here. Is the way it's written there, is that what we've always done? And as it is standing here, if we pass this specific bunch of words in front of us, is it going to be enforceable? I just want to make sure that we've got it right, that's all.
I feel reasonably comfortable we have got it right. I was just having a chat with my policy colleagues. If there were circumstances whereby there was an exception of a minor nature, such as a finals game which just pushes them slightly outside of the period, we can actually bring back a report to council and have that ratified for that minor amendment, as it's not a permanent change to the bylaw. So I think we feel pretty comfortable we can work through those processes without making substantial changes to the bylaw.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cairns, question?
Final question, please, Mr. Mayor. If this is adopted, in terms of signage and that sort of stuff, is their budget sufficient to inform the public as to any changes that are going to be put forward in the bylaw, please, to the reserves, etc.? Thank you.
We will do the normal process of putting the updated bylaw on our website and making the public aware that this has been updated. There are no substantial changes to the bylaw, as Nadisha said. It's relatively administrative in nature, dates, wording, clarification, those sorts of things. So in terms of the overall impact on the community, it's basically nil. It's a carry forward.
And any signage, or is there budget for signage in any of these parks and that sort of thing?
Yeah, ESU team is responsible for implementing this bylaw. That means placing signage. Currently, most of alcohol ban areas have signage in place, and they are working on, SBU team is monitoring those things, and they will place signage where necessary.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton, did you have a final question?
Yeah. Does, in line with my colleagues' questions actually, does the bylaw allow for exceptions on a event by event basis in our town areas, and also encompassing representative sport, again, which may be outside that September 1st? I know there's a lot of representative rugby that happens in September and other sports as well. But particularly events, is it someone wanted to have an event in Oxford in the middle of September or something?
Yes, there are exceptions in the bylaw. It has been mentioned under the section 10, page number 34. Then, shall I read it for you?
So I'm struggling.
There are exceptions, and
There's an exceptions clause in there.
yes, transport of the alcohol from licensed premises next to a public place, if it was lawfully bought on these premises for consumption, like that. And even for special events organized in park, especially. For example, if someone is organizing event in Victoria Park, it is comes under the alcohol ban area, but there are exceptions to use alcohol.
Use that, I imagine that was happening. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we now, I think we've had, unless there's any further questions, so we've got a series of recommendations. Councillor Bryans, you prepared to move? Someone second? Councillor Redmond, do you wish to speak? Councillor?
No, I just think that, it's an indication that we've got something that's pretty right and is working. And my earlier question didn't relate to any problems, but yeah, just I thought I'd missed something, yeah, so but very pleased with that. It's gone through as easily as it has. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond, do you wish to speak? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really, there are no drivers for change in this area. It's an evidence-based approach, and as Councillor Cairns noted, it is reactive to complaints that have been received by the police, largely in determining what areas are affected by this bylaw. So it is a complaint-based process, shall we say. And I certainly support it because there are no changes to the areas affected by the bylaw. And as has been mentioned, it's really just an administrative tidying up of some of the wording. So I would refer colleagues to the maps which show the areas affected by the ban. I'm unaware of any groundswell for changes. There were areas mooted to be added, but there was insufficient evidence to justify that occurring. I am aware of a small area in Kaiapoi that's not included in the map because it's not within our jurisdiction, so it'll take a bright person to try and find that area if they wish to go and have a picnic with alcohol. So I think it's a good bylaw. It really is an administrative matter that we do have to review these every so many years, and there are no changes, so if it's not broken, don't fix it. So happy to support it.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm going to abstain from this vote, and the reason I'm going to abstain from this vote is the fact that some of these areas straddle licensed areas, and it may have to sit in judgment on some of those areas as my role as chair of the DLC. So you just never know when a licensee crosses the line in a public area or serves alcohol in public areas that are under alcohol bans. So for that reason, I'll abstain. Do I have an opinion? Yes, I do. I think this is an absolute waste of time. This bylaw is not needed. And I'm sure my colleague who moved it will have a different view than that about tools in the toolbox for police to move people on. Those tools are already in the police's toolbox and have been for many, many years. Disorder, all of those things that are caused in these areas can be moved on by the constabulary of this country. And that's been that way since the start. So I'm not sure what we have it there for. To stop, so we stop all the mums and dads who go down with a bottle of wine and sit there and have a picnic for their 50th anniversary on the riverbank or around in a park somewhere. The people were good, law-abiding citizens who just go about their business, for a few idiots who want to go down there with a 50-litre keg and get themselves tipped over and fall in the water. That can be handled very easily by complaints that go through to the police. I've been around alcohol all of my life, and particularly since I was 18 years old as a publican, and I know how it works, and I know the harm it causes. And one of the reasons that I'm very passionate about my chair role as DLC on the district licensing, but I look at it from both sides, and why we have alcohol bans is beyond me. The licensing laws actually cover off what we need to do. What it is around policing. when there's problems on riverbanks and parks and so on, what happens? People call the police and then they come and sort it out. Now, yes, there's a tool in the toolbox called an alcohol ban, and no, you can't be here. Well, no one's done anything about the 3 or 4 guys that have sat on the Kaiapoi River outside the Cure Boating Club for the last 5 years that I can remember, because no one's complained. They sit there and drink booze every day, right in the middle of an alcohol ban. No problems, so no one does anything about it. So I just don't get the real reason for this. If you are having an event, you apply for a licence, you can control alcohol. And that's what the laws are for. So I have no idea what the purpose, apart from one tool for another organisation, that we need this law for. So I will, because as I say, some of these areas do cross public areas, and look, a good example is you have to come out of to get to an outside area in a tavern, we'll say, you might have to cross the walkway to get there. That is the public area and is inside a ban. If they're serving alcohol on there, then that would be dealt with through the licensing. So I make that quite clear as the reason why I abstain from this, but I certainly have a very strong opinion on it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Meanings.
Thank you. Look, this was quite a robust process that you've undertaken. You've looked into it very carefully, and you have gone out for consultation. As a member of the Drug and Alcohol Harm Prevention Steering Group for the last nearly 6 years now, we certainly put that information out to people that may have been interested in making a submission. And as you see from the only 7 submissions that you got, that they must have thought that it was just fine the way it was. I do know that that when we add places to the schedule, that as per our conversation about Pegasus last year, that if there's not a problem, we don't add it. So most of these maps we have here, which are presumably long-standing maps, are there because there have at times been issues there, so they've been added. Some towns only have their main drag, the main road. Some have specific parks. I can only take that as meaning that there have been issues in those places in the past. By and large, every now and then I point out the fact that I'm a Kiwi with a funny accent. I've never lived in a place where, aside from New Zealand, that you're allowed to walk around with an open alcoholic beverage in your hand. Except for here. Whenever I first came here 32 years ago, I thought, whoa, you can what? Walk down Queen Street, and back in the day. Anyway, I digress, but I presume that the only reason that these things are actually in here is because they have been asked to be put on here and that there have been issues. And I'm happy with what we've got in here. As my colleague here said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You had only 7 people that made a submission over the 162 engagements that you had, and they all said it's fine as it is, so I'm happy to support this.
Excuse me, could our public gallery please remain quiet? If you've got a thing to say, welcome to leave the chambers, but we do need things quiet, please. Thank you. Okay. Further speakers? Right reply, Councillor Bryan.
Just very briefly, Councillor Atkinson's quite right. I completely disagree. It's a tool in the police toolbox. We do have other tools, make no mistake about it, but it involves arrest. It involves detaining people if they're underage. So this bylaw actually helps because we just get rid of the booze, and we get, in some instances, we give a fine, and we don't go around the likes of the people in front of the Cure Boat Club. They're not a problem. This bylaw is for problems, and that's why it's evidence-based. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. With that, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Declare that carried.
Thank you.
You like that recorded?
Thanks.
So, so I declare that carried, and Councillor Deputy Mayor Atkinson's abstention recorded, please. Thank you. All right. Okay. Now, thank you very much, Nadisha and team. We're now at 6.3, which is Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very pleased to bring you this report today. It's a good news report. We'd like to seek the appointment of Aaron Hames as an additional local controller to be appointed by council. Note that should the council appoint Aaron today, we would take this report to the Joint Committee under the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Act for ratification. That would formally see Aaron join our team of then 7, and I just note a mistake in 1.2, that should be 7. This will bring that to 7 controllers on our team here in the Waimak district. You'll note in the report that Aaron has quite substantial experience as a controller in local government for other authorities, has also been part of group recovery and response teams, including the Canterbury 10 team, the C10 team that we have here in Canterbury, and is appropriately SIMS qualified, that's Coordinated Incident Management qualified. So he's an excellent appointee from our perspective in terms of joining our team of 7. As mentioned earlier by the Mayor, it is important that we have a good number of controllers to enable the rotating roster of civil defence qualified people that we have, which we can call upon 24/7 in an event to get our Emergency Operations Centre underway and started. So we welcome your questions and comments on this, but we would like to seek that appointment of Aaron Hames as a local controller. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Any questions? Question, Councillor Redmond?
Thank you, Simon. I've noticed that you've lost a number of controllers in the last 2 years. Have those people left the council's employment, or are they still here and no longer wishing to act?
It's substantially the former. Most have moved on from their roles. I think all have moved on from their roles in council. I think we have one that's the exception to that, and that's for other personal reasons. They have been unable to maintain their role.
So given the number that you've lost and we're seeking to appoint one, are you still looking for further volunteers, shall we say?
Yes, although not so much volunteers. We across the council have around about 250 odd identified staff members who play some form of role in an emergency operations centre. That could be simply just by being out in the community supporting communications efforts, or it could be here in the Emergency Operations Centre helping to coordinate the event. In amongst those teams, we have a range of different experience and qualifications, and so we hope to have a succession planning activity amongst that allows people who are working their way through those different functions of the Emergency Operations Centre to eventually gain the right qualifications, skills and experience to put their hand up as a potential controller. As you'll appreciate, under the Emergency Management Act, controllers have a significant amount of responsibility, so we need to make sure that person is both suitably qualified but also suitably experienced in dealing with those high pressure situations. So we are looking at others. The 7 provides us with sufficient capacity to run our 5 rotational shifts, plus a couple of spare, but it's very comfortable to have 10 in that situation, because in an event you don't always know who's going to be available.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I'll move from the chair the recommendation. Seconded, Councillor Redmond. Just briefly, had the opportunity to meet Aaron on a number of occasions now, and I've been very impressed with him actually, especially his calm and good way he deals with people. with that back experience, as has been mentioned, I think he'll add to the team. Under 3.5, it indicates who the current 6 are, and I think they're all eminently qualified individuals who do, and I've observed, do a really good job through that time. And I think Aaron will add to that. I'd be very surprised if the Joint Committee don't support that. It's normally a perfunctory manner of the appointment going through that, but I think Aaron will add to that, and a really good recommendation, so thank you for bringing that forward. Seconder, Councillor Redland.
Just briefly to endorse your comments, Mr Mayor. I've met Aaron myself. I think he's very well qualified for the position, and I certainly have no hesitation in seconding this recommendation, and wish you well in finding a few others. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Just had a question. I was quite delicate how I asked this. The 3.5. It mentions one of the final member there, Mark Maxwell. So is he currently? I saw Mark in the street the other day. Yeah.
So formally, Mark is still an appointed controller. He's not currently on our roster just because of his personal circumstances. Yeah. Yep.
Aware of that, but he's can't help it. So thank you.
All right. Okay. Any further questions? So, any other contributions? So with that, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Health and safety. Thanks, Simon. 7.1, Chief Executive. Thank you.
Yes, there's a report for the month of June. There were 8 instances shown on page 77. Take the rest of the report as being read.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Cairns?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to the graph or the thing on page 77 with regard to pedestrian crossings being an issue. This was raised at the accessibility group as well in regards to being an issue where people are not stopping. Is council going to do anything further apart from just trimming the vegetation? Is the other remediation going to be done?
I'm not 100% sure of the circumstances of this one. You're talking about trimming around rural areas particularly, or?
No, this relates to on High Street where vehicles are not crossing, not stopping for the crossing because they cannot see people. And this is, again, even an indication that people that are able-bodied are still not being seen. So there's obviously an issue at some of those
That's
crossings.
not what it says it's going to do there, though, around vegetation.
But do we need to actually do something further?
Assuming you raised it, Councillor Cairns, I'll be a road engineer to have a look at it and see whether there's any health and safety issues there.
Good stuff. Thank you.
It was asked of Joanne recently about that, so timely to bring it up, and because around the vegetation that was one of the issues. But okay, any further questions? Councillor Redland.
Thank you. Jeff, out of the 8 notifications, 3 relate to adverse interactions. Is that an increasing trend?
It's certainly increased since the lockdown of COVID. Is it increasing now? I think it's stabilised, and we're getting a little bit still coming through from people that don't agree with the rules. But basically, I think it's starting to stabilise out. Certainly keeping a track on it to make sure that staff are safe. You'll see a greater use of the body cameras that are being used now, which has been used to great effect.
It's not only our organisation, Councillor Redmond, there are others that report the same, and I'm aware the police are keeping a very close eye on that. Any further questions? Okay, there's a report there. Someone prepared to move? Moved Councillor Fulton, seconded Councillor Cairns. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Fulton?
No, I don't. Thank you. Happy to accept the recommendations or recommend.
Councillor Cairns? Any further speakers? Put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. We've got committee minutes 8.1 of UNR, utilities and roading. That it be received for information, moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Williams. Unless you wish to speak, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. We've got a series of community board minutes for information. Someone prepared to move, Councillor Manning, seconded.
With one small change. My name is spelled wrong on page 100. It's unconfirmed at the community
So
board.
you need to raise, perhaps if...
But yeah, I don't know how we work with that. But
well, I think if Courtney could take note of that. Which page is it?
Page 100.
Courtney could take note of that. We can't correct the minutes here. It's something you'll need to raise at the board meeting.
Not
for
important,
that.
but you know.
Well, actually, because they're unconfirmed minutes, so I assume
Yes.
have they been to the community board?
No, tomorrow.
So
yes, I wasn't sure what to do with that.
So could you perhaps just raise that the council meetings as well? All right, but if you could send that through to the thanks, Courtney. So with that, are you happy to move the minutes, council meetings, seconded by Councillor Fulton? It's just receiving those. So unless there's any other contributions, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. We just have a 5-minute adjournment. Those that want to do a quick stretch and toilet stop, and be back in here, and we'll proceed. We all good? Alright, so come to council portfolio updates. Under iwi relationships, just the chief executive and myself met with representatives of Ngāi Tuhuriri and Whitiora last week to brief them on the district plan. It was a really good meeting, actually, very good meeting, and I think very productive in terms of our relationship. So we hope to update you more in due course, but gave them a very good, and the staff gave a very good briefing of what's proposed in the district plan and how that might be implemented and what best practice might look like in that regard. So clear that that's there's a bit for us to all work through there as we understand what the Kāinga and the Hunga provisions are, but the other requirements there too. So very productive conversation. Is there anything you want to? Yes, they've indicated too that are open to a hui in the future as well. So that's something we'll look at doing probably in the commencement of our new term and how that looks. So I was very encouraged by that discussion.
Just a quick question, has the sealing of the pathway happened? Because it was to happen on the 5th or 6th of June.
Oh, the pathway through, I'm not clear on that. Have you had any update there, Councillor Redmond? No. We can find out, Joan.
I just thought they might say, oh, thank you.
I'm not sure. It wasn't noted there, but to be honest, we were in depth in other matters. So
right. No,
yeah.
it was just I was interested.
I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't notice it then. So
because there was wet weather when they were due to do it. That's why I asked.
Thanks. Thank you. Any further questions?
Were they happy with regard to the cultural, the sensitivity in terms of some of the decisions that were made by the commissioners, that they took into account some of the cultural issues like the wood end? Were they happy with those sort of things?
From what was reflected, yes. Okay. It wasn't. There wasn't any concern raised there. And in fact, well, there was there'd been in the work that led up to the district plan, there was a lot of working with Whitiora and successor predecessor organisations to get there. So there wasn't any view expressed there. They seemed very pleased with the provisions that were there, and happy with what survived. The key bit now is how that's implemented and how we work through across the organisation to give effect to that, which I'm personally, and I know the rest of you are very committed to seeing done properly as an exemplar of how we do it. There were some very generous remarks made that we're one of the first in the country that have got these provisions where they it wasn't Jeff in the sense of not the only council, but how we've put this together as one of the first. So it's a credit to I think the hearings panel and how they came up with that, understanding those provisions and now giving effect to those as the challenge, or not the challenge, but the opportunity for us.
Did they provide any feedback with regard to the bypass and wood end? Anything there? I'm not
going to get into that here. I'm happy to brief you later around that. Thank you. Okay. All right. Any other questions there? The Greater Christchurch Partnership update. Sorry. No, I don't think so. No. Sorry, it was just an operational measure. Greater Christchurch Partnership update. We haven't had a meeting since our last catch-up, so there's nothing to report. There are a few things in the arena at the moment just being discussed around passenger transport, and you'll have noted last week that the MRT looks like it's had some further progress, so that's good news because that's been a project that we've been pushing for or working in partnership with others for some time. There are a couple of matters that ECAN have raised, and they've certainly been in the media, and I've been asked if we would like a briefing on a couple of those matters, so I'll talk to you a bit later about that, and we can discuss whether we want to have those here in due course. But I did take part in a forum in Christchurch last week, which was run by Duncan Cottrell, which had myself, Mayor Sam, Mayor Phil, Mayor of Ashburton was included, and also the Deputy Chair of ECAN. It was a really good discussion, actually, talking about not only Christchurch, Greater Christchurch, but also Canterbury, and just the opportunities that we have together. The audience that was there were clients and other invited parties, but there was former Mayor Gary Moore in the audience, and I did note there that Gary was one of the originators of the then urban development strategy, which led to the Greater Christchurch Partnership. So, and I was able to talk about our new district plan and just exactly what that meant, and that we, as a district, are certainly very much open for business. And right across Canterbury we are, and the opportunities that we all have here. The aerospace strategy had just been announced that day by the Minister, so it was just timely on the back of that and the other opportunities that exist for us here. So very positive discussion, actually, so it was good to be part of that. Any questions? Okay. Government reforms, I don't really have anything to add at this point. I think you're probably as up to it as the rest of us are. We're still waiting to see where obviously the RM reform is sitting. Seen some further commentary from the Minister, but I don't want to speculate on all that until we see what actually eventuates. And there's a number of pronouncements which come out, announcements or things that have been talked of. There is a really positive one on Thursday, which will be here in our district, which is around which I've been invited to attend, which is to do with Waimakariri irrigation. I don't want to steal their thunder. It's not my place to announce that today, but there is certainly one there that's on Thursday, which is a good news story. All right. Any questions there? It's fair to say that's keeping our organisation pretty focused on all the submissions we're having to do, Jeff, isn't it? Staff are very busy in that space. All right, Canterbury Water Management Strategy. There's probably not a lot to offer to update there, Councillor Fulton.
No.
You might just want to use your microphone there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I can give you a final heads up on the 2025 Environment Awards. Entries close for these awards on July the 4th, so maybe too late for some, but nonetheless, it's worth noting, as per our own publicity, and I've circulated this, we're on the lookout for individuals or groups who undertake, champion or inspire environmental protection, conservation, restoration or sustainability within the Waimakariri district. Applications and nominations are sought for youth that's under 18 or 18 or under, could also be a youth group, individuals, group or organisation, and that encompasses commercial companies, volunteer groups and NGOs, whether formal or informal. It is, and it could, all sorts of things, could be encompass weeds and pests. Is your company's native roadside berm looking awesome? Have you got Indigenous biodiversity that you want to showcase or improve? All sorts of things there. So, this is now being managed by the Biodiversity Trust. We've got our own Bex Dollery taking the sort of lead on this as far, and basically it will be the champions will be announced in conjunction with our community awards sometime in August. So it's I think this is the third year they'll be running it. It's really really positive. It's sort of literally sort of it's building its own steam, a little bit of its own mana, I think, over time. So, yeah, it is a project that was initiated and maintained by the Water Management Zone Committee, which is no longer functioning. And I'll just say, in light of the regional sort of zone review, that I understand there's still ongoing discussions as to the nature, shape and form of these zones and what it means for waimakariri, but I'm not across all the details. So look forward to hearing more when the time is right. So thank you.
Any questions of Councillor Fulton? Just to add that Deputy Mayor and myself met last week to discuss the Community Service Awards, and we've selected of those that we had up to 10. We had quite a large list, didn't we, Neville? Plus an award for business and Mayor's Award in that as well. So shaping up to be really good community awards. I think they're scheduled for September, aren't they, Courtney? So between governance, my office and comms, we're managing that. So it's quite a big effort to bring it all together. So just to acknowledge that.
Just to be clear, is it September? I've seen some other communications which seem to indicate that we'll have something different, our Community Service Awards in August. But
no, it's
definitely September.
I think it was thought of August at one stage, but
September. Yeah,
on reflection, just looking at how much time it takes to interview, get it all shaped, we pushed it into September to give a bit more time, and it's to be held at the town court.
Yeah.
Is that right? Court,
yeah. Just is that clear to the to our biodiversity team, to the organisers of the awards? I presume it is, but well, can we just make that clear to them in case they've somehow got it in their head that it's August? I had it, yeah.
Courtney, we might just, if you could coordinate that, just to make sure that they are aware.
Yeah, of the exact date and nature.
It's Beck's Dollery, isn't it? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
September sounds right, but
yeah. So Courtney takes the lead in that space. If you don't mind, Courtney, that would be great. Thank you. You're doing a very good job at it too. Right. Climate change, sustainability, Councillor Mealings.
Thank you. Yeah, there's quite a lot of work going on at the moment, but just mentioning a few things. Last week, the DIA released a guidance document outlining requirements for regional councils and territorial authorities arising from changes to Lagoima, which comes into force as of today, and the local government regulations, which comes into force on the 17th of October, about guidance for natural hazards information and LIMS, including the impacts of climate change on natural hazard risks. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like for us just yet, because it's very fresh. It just came out a few days ago, really. But this council did submit on the content of that draft guidance document. We just haven't had a chance to sort of see if our concerns have been expressed in that final version or not, but it'll be good to have some guidance on it, but yeah, see what it looks like. On the biodiversity front, Bex is writing an update report on where we've gotten to in the first year since rolling out the natural environment strategy, but we've made some really good progress on the 85 actions that we've scheduled in the years 1 to 3 so far. That's a pretty big body of work, but once she gets all the data pulled together, she'll share it with council. We currently have 6 students, ranging from undergrad to master's and PhD students, who are undertaking research work across the district on various biodiversity-related topics, everything from riparian planting best practice through to soil differences and how they influence restoration work. So it's really good to actually have those research students actually out doing that here in our district. That's great for both of us, good for their education and good for us to actually get that data that they're working on for us, which is pretty awesome. There are several private restoration plans and lots of advice going at the moment out to support that, in addition to a lot of work going across the district on our land. And the Biodiversity Champions meeting was held last week on the 23rd of June, and we talked about a lot of things, but they talked about the opportunity to submit on dock proposals being consulted on right now. For instance, the soon-to-be taken over by DOC Predator-Free 2050 strategy and DOC's biodiversity strategy implementation plan. And they did a wrap-up of the last workshop that they held on the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy Revitalization, and they're planning one more stakeholder workshop on the 7th of August, whilst they're concurrently drafting the revised strategy and incorporating that feedback from those workshops as they go. In addition to that, we talked about how apparently the Canterbury Mayoral Forum has asked the Biodiversity Champions Group to consider work on a possible regional monitoring program, just to think about how that might work. And we had a presentation on nature-based solutions by Forest and Birds' Nikki Snoyink and Carl Morgan. You guys would have probably all gotten a nice little pamphlet in your cubby holes there. That's pretty much what they presented on. And you know, the upshot of that's basically that what we consider to be infrastructure should be more than just roads and pipes. You know, natural infrastructure can address a lot of issues like slips, erosion, flooding, while providing better environmental outcomes for biodiversity, emissions, things like better water quality, while making the environment safer, more attractive for people, and generally at a cost savings. So it's not just a nice to have, it's something that we should always look at first. I also attended the Waste Men's Conference in the second week of June along with Kitty and Maria, and in addition to the usual awesome variety of ideas and initiatives being carried out across the country for inspiration, you know, there's not enough time to talk about all that right now because it was, you know, like four days. But yeah, just I suppose the one noteworthy thing that I would mention was the report that was commissioned by NZIER. Do you want me to wrap this up, sir, or are you, okay?
Thank you,
sorry.
but I was just saying, rather
yeah.
than you feeling rushed on that, a report with staff to UNR might be a good outcome on it, because there's obviously what happens at Wastemans is something really good to hear about.
There's a lot. I was looking at all the notes I took, about 8 pages of different workshops and things, so I won't try to get that out right now. But yeah, the Wastemen's commissioned NZIER to assess the sector's economic contributions to the New Zealand economy and those opportunities across the sectors, and it just really demonstrated the waste efficiency as being something good for New Zealand's, you know, something that's as good as for the economy as it is for the environment. You know, some of the key findings were that the waste resource recovery and contaminated land management sectors contribute over $3.3 billion to the New Zealand economy, but waste inefficiencies are costing the country $222.8 million annually in avoidable disposal costs. New Zealand's material productivity was only 59% of the average OECD countries, despite Kiwis consuming more materials per capita. So that kind of talks, you know, when we talk about our lower productivity, it's there. We're using more stuff, producing less with it because we're wasting a lot of it. An estimated 40% of waste that gets sent to Class 1 landfills is divertible. So as a country, you know, that's a huge opportunity for us to make some big improvements there. And carbon emission efficiencies would come with better disposal and management of waste, with future costs of abating emissions from waste estimated at this point at $481 million. So, you know, the waste resource recovery and contaminated land management sectors contribution to New Zealand is even broader than just those environmental and economic benefits, because we've got reduced emissions, a volunteer-driven community, and those initiatives that come along with that. And it also helps address illegal dumping of rubbish, food waste, air pollution, you name it. I will leave you with that. Although I will actually mention one other thing. I just last week there was an event held at the RSA by Rewiring Aotearoa. I don't know if anybody follows those guys, or maybe it's just me because I'm a geek, but Mike Casey, who, does anybody watch Country Calendar? Yeah, so the guy that had the electric cherry orchard, did anybody see that? So that's Mike Casey. Anyhow, he's got the first, maybe the only in the world, all-electric orchard, and right down to you know, all of his electricity generation, right down to tractors and things that, you know, we didn't think were possible. Anyhow, he has gotten on board with the Rewiring it's kind of a global movement, but Rewiring Aotearoa. And there are 27 groups across the country that are talking about, you know, electrification and how you can save money and what you can electrify, and just, yeah, there are groups right through the country on this. And one of the interesting things that he said was that New Zealand is at a tipping point due to the fact that our fossil fuels are really expensive here in New Zealand, that we're pretty much at that tipping point now where it's actually cheaper, finally, to go electric than it is to actually carry on with our fossil fuel use, because generation and those electric alternatives have come down in price, and of course fossil fuels have raised in price. Now, we do know that New Zealand needs to double generation, you know, double our electricity generation to electrify everything. So, you know, that's a big thing. But if 80% of New Zealand homes had solar, that would produce 40% of New Zealand's generation needs. So that pretty much means that households with, say, rooftop solar could be part of New Zealand's national electricity infrastructure. And it was just really food for thought, that, you know, there are always things changing out there, and better ways to do things are coming on stream all the time. And, you know, it pays to sort of stay abreast of that. And I've probably mentioned, actually, I'll save that for you and our waste mins. But yeah, just lots of stuff. I'll leave you with that.
Thanks, Nikki. And Joan, you're chair of UNR at the moment. Perhaps it's something you could just talk with Jared about as a feedback around the Waste Mins conference there for Nikki and Kitty, and who was the other? There was another, Maria, that we tonight. Thank you. It was a good update as always, Nikki. Is there any questions of Nikki? Thank you very much. International relationships, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The groups, we got together and talked about Anzac Day and the problems that we had, and the, I suppose, brickbats and bouquets was really what it was. The RSAs were extremely happy with the sound systems and the way that Anzac Days went this year. Always improvements. It doesn't matter, any event's exactly the same. You run an event, there's always things you can improve on. So, but they were very happy and want to continue and acknowledge that this is becoming bigger than Ben-Hur the day. It's just growing and growing and growing, particularly with young people. So something we need to keep an eye on in the future is how big where these things are, and that they are that we have an eye over the organisation of them, so that we know what's happening within those days. And they are days now, not just one day, and they've been days for a wee while for the likes of Ahoka and Sefton and those sorts of places. But we just need to keep our eye on it and make sure that within that portfolio that it is reported back on, and you all know exactly what's going on in those areas. And they are looking for the growth themselves. They're very happy with the success of where they've been heading in the last few years with it. Also, board member Keatley and myself have been working on a strategy to enhance the Passchendaele Walkway in conjunction with the RSAs, and will certainly be in conjunction with Passchendaele itself in time to come. And very conceptual, at the very baby stage of doing anything, but one of the things that we, and I'll talk to Jeff about the which way we go about this, but we would like to see the Passchendaele path extended officially from cenotaph to cenotaph, rather than stopping in the middle of a paddock in Southbrook and stopping in the middle of a paddock at the Mafeking Bridge. We think that there's lots of benefits by extending the official part of that right through to both cenotaphs. I know that there's a gap in the Rangiora end as far as the cycleway walkway goes there, but that will remedy itself over time and become apparent. But there's lots of things. We've got things that we're putting together, like what do you call them, alleyways of trees down the walkway, particularly away from railway lines, obviously. But one side, there's many examples around the world of these types of walkways, and we would like to join the international collective, if you like, of these walkways and memorials to the wars that have passed. And it would appear upon confirmation, we're just waiting for confirmation, but as you are all well aware, and dare I mention them, the willows that got cut down in Murphy Park will be replaced with 6 substantial trees in there, and they are substantial. They are not sticks of trees. They are trees that will be transplanted into there so that they have a really good start. They're 6 metres high. And the part of that, if we can get the pathway extended, is that we will probably look at some type of plaque system, and as I say, with confirmation from ECAN, we will try and name those after the battles that have been in the past, to incorporate that into the walkway cycleway of Passchendaele right through to the cenotaph. The cenotaph speaks for itself, and the cenotaph this end speaks for itself. It's that whole thing in the middle. And we've gone as far as looking into, the Peter Jackson type thing of maybe some dugouts with information down the walkways and how we do that. And we're looking at public money. We're not looking at council money. I will make that very clear, because someone will obviously jump up and down about that. But no public money I'm talking about. And we're looking at bringing the army in, all those things. We are looking at trying to set up a Sea Cadets also in Kaiapoi, and working with the Navy to do that. And we just received last week the official papers to have a look at how that's done. It's about a 2-year exercise to get that done. And again, all of those tie-ins come in. The squadron up here in Rangiora already exists. Sea Cadets make sense down in Kaiapoi, along with, Coast Guard and all of the other things that happen down in that area. So we're looking right the way through it, the whole gambit of how we can plant up and down and how we bring Passchendaele in. So the idea is that Rangiora plantings, if you like, because very different to the Kaiapoi plantings when it comes to trees and things at the Rangiora end, Kaiapoi plantings at the other end, and in the middle, hopefully we involve Zonabeki and around Passchendaele to have a look at what types of trees and plantings they use there, and incorporate them and tell a story all the way down the path, and as I say, make it truly international, that people will, not only local people will want to ride, but hopefully people when they're over from overseas will come here to look at what's established down there. So we're trying to get that underway now. It's, as I say, very conceptual at the moment, and we'll do a presentation when we have some to council, when we have some more firm plans and how we're going to go about that. Keep Rangiora Beautiful was already on board and want to get going as of yesterday, up this end. So we're looking at some, if you like, some runs on the board before we even get underway, so to speak. The bridge at the Mafeking, and I'm going to talk to Jared about this. He knows nothing about this yet either. That's how conceptual it is, but looking at that's got to be upgraded, and I think it's in the budget next year or the year after, Jared. It was pushed out, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember which year, but it is.
It's, yeah. We're talking, and I mean, you always talk big, don't you, when you're talking, so look out. Looking at the fact that may be able to become, properly engineered, but a Bailey type bridge deck on that, to represent the army and those sorts of things, with some sides that we've got in mind. So again, working with Jared's team, we'll talk about that, whether that's even possible money-wise. All those sorts of things are yet to come. So that's international relations, really. So a bit going on compared to the last wee while where there hasn't been a lot going on.
I think though you've had that brewing for some time.
We have had.
So no, that sounds exciting. And look forward to hearing further about that in due course. But I think that way as you're talking about linking the two cenotaphs makes a lot of sense. How we put that into practice. Be good. So you and Russell come to a presentation on that.
We will present to both council and the boards around so that people know exactly what's going on, because I mean, Passchendaele's everybody's walkway, not just Rangiora and Kaiapoi, you know, it's everybody's. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. You're not going to bring your bridge in there, swing bridge in there too, Tim, are you?
We could bring it down and hang it across the
Observed here, very considered in my questions here today. Right. Now, you mentioned, thank you for that update, Deputy Mayor. Passchendaele Path, my one and only time I've done that path, I noticed there's not a lot of sort of storyboards or stopping points along that path with 6 or 7 Ks, and whereas I see in the this is just showing off with my biking. I was with my Northern Bypass. There's a lot of stopping points and posts, and it's really interesting along the way. And for want of a sign, is there some consideration to having sort of reference points for, you know, battle sites, historical areas along the existing?
Exactly
that's what you're going to do. It's
exactly
good.
What we're talking
Great
about.
stopping points. So the other thing is just feeding this information into a local schools as part of the curriculum. You know, Southbrook, Kaiapoi, Borough, whatever, you know, really quite localised sort of storytelling in schools. Is that?
We're talking about Navy, Air Force, Army, schools, and whoever else, you know, all the Rotaries, all of those people getting involved in the project. It's truly, as I say, this is not because of geographically where the path is. It's actually about the whole project from an international point of view. And so that involves everybody, and if that even involves people in Christchurch to come out and do things well, then it does. We'd be very happy for that. But the idea is to not drag on the public purse, is to try and get this thing established. I'm not talking about an exercise that in 6 months' time you'll see a massive difference, but it could be a 50-year project. You know, it might be a 10, 20-year project. We don't know. We haven't got that far yet.
Thank you. And just on that meeting that was held with the RSAs, we had a good attendance from our staff there too. And it was, just to emphasise the points that the Deputy Mayor made, really good feedback and appreciation from the RSAs for their support, Jeff, for the sound systems, which made a huge difference compared to the previous year, where there were a range of issues. So professionalising that is the right thing to do for the future, especially with the turnout there. And it was noted, particularly with Rangiora, overflow goes on to the corner. Well, that may not always be able, especially if a new building and when a new building goes up there. So around the management of that is just something. There was talk about the various events that there are. Probably the main accommodation was around the timing from Kaiapoi and Rangiora, quarter of an hour each or thereabouts, which enables those who, like myself or others that go on, do go to both Rangiora and Kaiapoi, or Kaiapoi and Rangiora, the ability to actually get there in time. There's no way you can get to Oxford or those localities, and that would have been an ideal. But there wasn't a desire to change that at this point. But it's just getting that timing right, so that when you're going to those events, that you've got time to actually physically get there, rather than like this year, we're very lucky with the accommodation from President Neil and the RSA and Kaiapoi that enabled to be front-loaded, as it were, to be front at the start of the service, so we could get to Rangiora in time. But without that, it is physically impossible to get there unless the timings are adjusted. So that was a good outcome of that. Okay, any other questions of Deputy Mayor there? Property, and just to acknowledge our roading team, Jared too, who I know Sean and the team do a huge amount of work, as well as our green space team with that work as well. But it was very much noted and appreciated by our RSAs, their support. There was a desire also expressed there around Oxford. There might be look at a small, maybe a street parade of some sort, but it was indicated to at that point that that's a matter that the both, I think it's the Lions that take the lead on that now, and Oxford would need to consider and advise on, rather than us resolving there and then that that's a good idea. And it's something they'll need to work through, and then obviously traffic management related would need to work with our staff on that. Property and housing?
Yeah, look, I promised I would update on the pensioner housing units or aged housing units. I don't know if I'm allowed to use the word pensioner, even though I'm nearly one myself. And I do have that update, and just to let you know that the resource consent was lodged and should be available in early this month. And Linds have given the approval back in May to obviously use that land, because clearly that's Mooba land and needs both consent from us, obviously, and from Linds to do so. Building consent was lodged on the 23rd of June, and hopefully won't be too far away. It should be a doddle to get that through, shouldn't it? So we should have that pretty quickly, hopefully, to be able to move on. Procurement for the contractors, there's 3 been chosen, so they'll be back they'll be doing the procurement on the actual build. The kitchens on those, just so you know, are a different procurement, and that's because we've got a lot of other units in which we're refitting over time under maintenance, and those kitchens that will make it a lot more economical for that to flow through into not just the 20 units that we're building, but also into the other units that we have, and make it a bit easier and hopefully cheaper to refit the kitchens there. And as I say, the resource consent looks like it'll be issued in early July. And we also have the solar panels are approved. The contractor for that has been approved, and I'm just what are they called? Can't remember their name, but that's been approved and ready to go. I actually have it here if anyone wants to know what they are. I actually have it written down here, that the actual who they actually are. But we're basically ready to go, just about. It won't be too long, and we will have our own staff down there, digging the piles in and getting things going.
Good work.
Joke.
Any questions of the Deputy Mayor? And you've got the property portfolio meeting Thursday this week.
Thursday.
All right, thank you. I've got no questions under standing orders, no urgent general business. We now come to matters to be considered with the public excluded, and there's reasons outlined. Is someone prepared to move? Councillor Bryan, seconded. Councillor Ward. Sorry, hand was up first. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say